Our guest is Eli Velasquez, and we have been talking about the music industry, traveling as a family, and the attack that comes in some cases, not always. But continue, let's talk about how you find out a family member is slipping away from you before your very eyes, and then what's the step? What's the next step? Because this has happened to many parents, many families, all over the nation, all over the world. What do you do? How do you not attack that person? And when I say attack, sometimes in our best, good Christian way, well, why are you out there? What are you doing? You know, I know. That's really not the way to bring somebody to Christ or to renew the joy in their life so they recognize who God is in their life. What do you do?
Well, in my case, I was an uncle. And being an uncle, it's not as personal as being a parent.
Right.
And so it was easier for me to get after my nephew than my brother he would have had a harder time.
Yes.
But anyway, the way I attacked, I just said you needed help. And when you get your help, and after you get your help, then I'll consider and see if we can work together again. But until then, it's not even negotiable until you get some help. He said, well, where am I going to get some help? Well, I happened to stumble into this place, and they want to talk to you right now. So he stalled it. He wanted to get a haircut, and he wanted to go get his beard shaved, and then he wanted to get clothes. And I says, no. We're going to go over there now. We're going to do that now. So we took him there. And when he got there, of course, he wasn't happy. And they loved on him, and they told him it's only a 3-month program. And so he ended up staying. His first 2 months were not good because he complained, belly ached, and threatened he was going to run away and leave. And so finally, when he got it on the 3rd month, his time was over. And then he decided, you know, I really complained too much on the 2 months. I probably need to stay longer.
Wow.
So he stayed helping the director, and it from that 3 months turned into be 8 months. So right around the 8th month, he called my brother David, and this is Jackie Velasquez's father, and said to him, you know, they're going to foreclose on this building here. They're going to kick us all out. There's about 11, 12 men here that if they go back into the streets, they're going to die.
It's done, yeah.
And says, is there anything that we can do? So my brother called me, and we got together, and we tried to put as much money together to try to save it. And I was there thinking, wow, I don't know anything about this. What am I going to do, Lord? I know, Lord, that the other day I cried out to you and I says, God, please use me in some way, but you're supposed to send me back on the road.
Right, yeah. I had a way that I wanted you to use me, Lord.
There's a way, absolutely. And so I went, so I just waited upon the Lord, and more responsibility.
Yes.
I kind of felt like the guy in The Wonderful Life who wanted to get out of the town and he couldn't.
Yes.
And so I ended up staying there. And 2 years after that, I ended up staying full-time.
Wow.
But you know, by then, God knew exactly what he was doing with me. And he gave me a love for these men. And let me tell you about people that have problems with drugs, addiction, okay? These people, from the time that they're little, they have big hearts. And that's why I really believe that they are a big target for the enemy.
Yes.
Because you take the drugs away from them, these men, I would trust them with anything because I love them so much, you know, and they would do anything for me, anything. And because they have big hearts, that's who they are. And they've just been wounded, and they've been hurt, and most of it's perception. That's all it is. I used to think it was bad behavior, but it's mostly perception problems.
There are people out there who have a family member that they know is actively involved with a substance abuse. They're actively doing this. And, you know, I will say that, you know, in certain pockets of Atlanta, and I've seen it over and over again, there's a small house behind the regular home that family member is allowed to live, do drugs, and come in to the main house and have dinner and go back into this little house. And I have never believed that is the way that you help someone out. Talk to us about the pain of being a loved one who wants to help but is helping in the wrong way. What's the right help?
Well, First of all, when you come to the realization that you're not going to be codependent anymore, you can't love your children to death. The comfortable thing to do is to give them things, to bail them out of trouble, to pay for their mortgage, to pay for their car, give them a bed to sleep. But do you know that in order to get their son's attention, you have to create a crisis? And if you don't do it, the world will do it.
Absolutely.
They'll end up in jail, end up in the hospital, but it's important that there's a crisis. In other words, son, you can no longer live in our home anymore while you're doing this behavior. It's time for you to leave. I will love you, I will pray for you, but until you say you want help,
and mean it,
we will help you then. But until then, you're on your own.
Now that's the tough love.
Absolutely.
And that is what a lot of people don't want to do. You know, it's interesting that we'd never, ever, ever hear of God saying, "Oh, it's gonna be all right. You continue to be who I didn't call you to be, and everything's gonna work out."
Exactly.
Quite the opposite, right?
Absolutely.
But as we walk through our humanity, my husband says it to me best. He says, "Stop trying to outdo God. Do it the way He does it. Don't try to do it the way you think He does it." He gives us an example. There's a book called the Bible that we can flip in any page, and we see His will and His way.
Right.
We don't have to figure it out. When Genesis Ministries came together, and you say you have a love for these men, did you realize that you were empowering 12 to 15 men every 8 months? You're empowering them to go back out to do what you have done for them, for someone else.
Right. And basically, when they're there at Genesis Ministries, they're learning about their true identity because they've lost their identity. Their parents might have told them, well, you know, you are our children, but because of their perception, and like we meet such wonderful, wonderful parents, wonderful people that come into our ministry, and I'm scratching my head many times, okay, how in the world did this happen to you? Who dropped you on your head?
Right.
You know, and we find out, you know, it's nothing that they did wrong raising the children. It's because of perception. That these children, they perceive this. They perceive maybe mom loves my brother more than he loves me. Well, I'm the black sheep of the family. I'm no good. And they begin to establish that lie within them, and they live according to that lie.
Wow.
And, you know, and as parents, we don't know. There's really no manual and nothing to teach us other than the Bible. But, you know, and a lot of times we fall into guilt because we feel like it's our fault. We're bad parents. Well, let me tell you something, okay? And this will give you a lot of relief here. If God, who is the best parent of all and the true parent of all, couldn't stop His 2 kids from eating from that forbidden tree, what makes you think that your children are going to be the perfect ones? We don't know what they're going to turn out like. But we can always go back to the scripture that says that if you train up a child in the way he should go, that when he gets old, notice that God put a nice little disclaimer there.
That.
Old.
Old, which
he'll never depart.
Right. And old is mature, and old is the mature knowledge of Himself, God
like
Himself.
Yes.
It's not old as in when he turns 40. It's maturity. You know, and I always laugh when I hear people talk about that scripture because and using it in situations like this because it's when they get older they'll grow out of it. No, it is a basis of maturity that God is speaking of. But sometimes it's us, the parents, the loved ones, the enablers around that need to mature.
Absolutely.
So that we can be a better help.
And I usually tell parents, I tell people this, is that a lot of times it's embarrassing because you feel like you're all alone in this battle, but you're not alone. 1 out of 3 families have a loved one that's addicted to drugs.
That is a crazy, crazy number. 1 out of 3.
I should say 1 out of 3 homes. So if you live in a neighborhood, okay, you can count that 1, 2, 3.
Issue.
1, 2, 3, there's issues in there, but nobody says anything because we got that big elephant in the living room. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to acknowledge it. Everybody's quiet. They go to church and pretend like everything's okay. But it's not okay. You're hurting, and somebody needs to finally break the silence and say, you know what, we do have a problem.
I think one of the things that is a major issue today is that, one, when I grew up, I was in church from, I don't know, 7 in the morning. It seemed like I had breakfast at church. I had lunch at church. And most Sundays I had dinner at church. Church was like the community center, the place where I had my first dance. It was the place that everything happened. The basketball court was there. Everything happened in this place called that church. Now, today we don't have a community church.
Right.
It is a 20-minute church. It is an hour church. It is, now let's just give them enough so they can go do what they want to do with the rest of their day. So it's not lifestyle.
Right.
It's not kingdom lifestyle.
Right.
Talk to us about what kind of changes that we need to make as we are the church, the individual, to come together collectively to be the church as a group so that we are surrounding our children with people, extended family, with family that can walk them through anything.
Well, first of all, it takes a community.
Yes.
It does take a community. When you and I were growing up, I remember it was a community that raised us.
Yes.
Many times, my next door neighbor gave me a spanking.
Oh, yes.
And then I'd come crying to Daddy, and Daddy said, well, what'd you do? Well, I just threw a rock at his car.
And you got a spanking from Daddy.
I got the second one, yeah. So it was a community that raised us, and everybody knew about everybody.
That's right.
And today, I think that if we allow the church, loved ones, people to be part of our lives, and we can help each other in that way.
That's right.
And whenever there's a problem with drugs, that we're not afraid to talk about it, that we're not afraid to, but we don't want to judge our children and say, well, you know, you're going to go to hell because you're doing this. You're not my son anymore. I disown you. We don't want to do that. We want to love them, but not enable them.
Love them, but not enable them.
Exactly.
You know, people need to understand that these things are closer to your neighborhood than you know.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and I know you guys are in Kennesaw. Please tell us the website that people can get you.
Yes, it's www.genesisministries.org. And you can find any information about drugs there and what we do. And it is a Christian faith-based program. In fact, we call it a regeneration program.
Oh,
it's
I
not
like
even a
that.
rehabilitation program.
It's a regeneration program.
Right, you know, because I believe that when God gets a young man like this, they say, well, you know, he's an addict because of genetics, his genes and whatever. Well, regeneration to me means to re-gene. So we all of a sudden we're going to take God's genes now.
We must take God's genes.
Absolutely, but it is a
Thank
walk,
you.
it's a commitment, and it's something very difficult that these men do. It's the hardest thing they've ever done in their lives.
And the best thing.
But the most rewarding, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Genesis Ministries, if you don't know, you better. We'll be back.